Chelsea Jensen here. Today we are going to make chicken pot pie biscuits. So essentially pot pie filling with a biscuit topping and then some banana donuts. And then we're going to be using our stock that we've been stewing overnight on here. So it's made from our chicken carcasses that we had left over last night. We'll strain it and we'll use a little bit of this in here. We threw in some carrots and celery and onions, some bay leaves, pepper, but it's a nice concentrate and it's so full of flavor and will be delicious. But we'll use a little bit of that in our pot pie with some of our extra shredded chicken. We'll have a full video on how to make that coming out this weekend. But let's start by getting our onions sauteed up and our meaty filling, our pot pie filling for the base of our chicken pot pies. And then we'll make a yummy kind of Cheddar Bay biscuit topping to go on top. And then those can bake up in the oven while we make our banana donuts. So let's get these guys kind of peeled off here. And then we'll add this. Then I'm going to give them a nice kind of small dice because we want our pieces to be nice and, smaller, spoon size. Think about, pot pies. You kind of eat it with a fork, but you kind of want it to be good and like soup size bites. So get them diced up here. And I'm using one big yellow onion for it. And this is going to make 6 good size pot pies here. I've got little mini Dutch ovens that we're going to bake them in, but you could also do mini pie dishes. Or if you want to, you could do it in like a big 9 by 13 inch like casserole pan. That would work well. Give this a quick toss and then we'll coat those up in our olive oil and we'll get our rest of our our veggies prepped and ready to saute off. But we'll saute off all of our veggies and we'll add in our chicken and then we'll kind of coat everything in flour and then we'll add in our lovely stock, which will add in a great bit of flavor. Okay, just breaking it apart. And then I'm going to turn on my heat and I'm going to have it start on a 6. And then once my pan gets nice and hot, we'll turn it down a little bit. We've got our carrots and we've got celery. So I've got 3 good carrots here. We're using some rainbow ones today. So I've got a yellow, white, and an orange. We're going to give them a good peel. Now these are pretty good sized carrots. So it's around, 4 medium size or 3 large. I'm going to peel off this kind of the outsides of them. So we're left with a nice, sweet inside. There we go. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to quarter them and then dice them up so we have nice smaller chunks that will get nice and tender during our saute process. And then we'll also have celery and then mushrooms. And that's kind of going to be our vegetable base for this. We're going to season it with our, some fresh garlic, herbs de Provence, a little bit of black pepper, garlic salt, and then our stock. But pretty simple kind of base for this, but yummy and delicious. This is one of my parents' favorite meals, and Torn will be very, very happy. He loves this meal because I think he loves the biscuit topping on top of it, and he loves pot pies. And I actually say Lena loves this as well because she loves the biscuit and the pot pies. Although if they had their choice, they would just want, Lena would just want the chicken with the biscuit on it. Torn would just want mushrooms, onions with the biscuit on it. And the cameraman would be like Lena, just the chicken and the biscuits as well. But my parents and I, we want all the veggies. So we get our carrots here. Now you could also throw in peas or green beans, whatever vegetables you want. You can always add in some more. I used to always add in peas, but outside of my parents and I, nobody else in my family likes peas. They don't share their love of peas with me. And they got their disdain for them from my husband. And I always feel like he just thinks he doesn't like peas and he just won't give them a fair he won't give them a fair try. Although one time we were at my sister's house, and for dinner my brother-in-law made this like green pea risotto, and I will give credit to my husband. He was polite and he ate it and he was like, it's delicious. And I knew he was suffering over there, but he was polite and he ate his serving. And I was like, see, you can eat peas. Not a problem. And there we go. So we've got our carrots here. I'm not going to put them in yet. I want my onions to get a little bit more caramelized before we toss them in there. Right here, I'm going to turn up our stock just a little bit for it. And get these onions just broken apart. The trick is during the sauteing process, you're going to want to make sure everything gets a good caramelization on it and gets nice and tender. We will bake these in the oven, but they're only going to bake in the oven long enough to cook the biscuit. It's not going to bake to make the veggies tender. So this is a really important process to make sure it all gets nice and tender on there. Let's get our celery prepped as well so we can add these in here. I've got a couple good stalks here. We're going to use it all, including, the leafy pieces. Kind of trim off these tops. We're going to just slice it down the middle so we have kind of smaller chunks in it. Because again, I like to have, smaller bits of veggies, but lots of them. And then I'm going to use these, and I'm just going to use maybe the tips of these. Sometimes when you get to the really yellow kind of parts of the celery, they can be a bit more bitter. So I'm not going to use those parts, but I'll use some of the leafier parts.
How was the dinner last night?
Oh, it was delicious. I think that was probably my best sourdough loaf. It just was perfect. The chicken was amazing, and the gravy turned out fantastic. I feel like the broth, like the juices left over, was just wonderful. And of course, he doesn't love mashed potatoes, and the carrots were wonderful. It was just a nice, perfect day because it was so rainy yesterday. So it just felt like a nice rainy day, like a chilly, rainy day winter meal. And I will say, I've had this stock over here cooking all night. And so little Jackie woke up several times last night. And eventually, at like 4 a.m, I went and grabbed him and brought him into our room. But it smelled so good because this has been wafting through our house, and all of like 4 a.m. And I'm just like, our house smells like amazing. And it just made me so hungry. I was so tired. But at the same time, I'm like, oh, it smells so good. Maybe that's why Jackie couldn't sleep. Maybe he was like, it smells so good. You should be feeding me. He was not. He woke up at like, and Jackie, he's a really great sleeper. But I don't know why, but he woke up at like midnight, and then at 2 a.m. and then at 4 a.m. And eventually it was, I was like, okay, you're just going to come into the room with us. Because if I go in there, I'm going to not wake up in time to get, Lena gets up. I get her up around 5:45, 6 a.m. because her bus comes at like 6:20, and she's like, I just need 20 minutes to get ready for the bus. And I'm like, kudos to you. Not many high school girls will get ready for the bus in 20 minutes, but that's all she wants.
Did Lena like both of her desserts this week?
Oh, yes. And in fact, on the drive home from soccer practice last night, she goes, the key lime pie is mine. Nobody else is getting another slice. And, my husband was like waiting all day. He's like, I'm going to have myself another slice of key lime pie. And I told him all day, I'm like, no, you're not. No, you're not. And he was like, after, Lena was eating her dinner last night, and she was like, oh, can you get me a slice of pie? And he was like, that is my birthday pie. You cannot have it. Otherwise, Mama has to make me another pie. And so she's very, very happy. She told me that she was going to take it to her room if anybody else tried to eat it.
Us boys will make one.
I know. So I was like, I'm glad you liked it. The brookies are pretty much all gone. The little boys were just like devouring them yesterday. They were such a hit, I will say. But anyways, I will say she was very, very happy. She got her two favorite desserts. So And especially because she's not much of a dessert girl. She has never been really big into, like cakes and stuff like that. But she's very, very happy. I'm adding in my celery and my carrots to the base for our kind of our chicken pot pie base for this. Get those all in here. Give it a good mix around. I'm going to turn it down now to about a 3, and we'll let those start to saute up. We'll mince up some garlic and get that in there. And then we'll saute up our mushrooms. And then we'll add in some of our shredded chicken from last night. And then we're going to make our biscuit base. Here we go. Okay, let's get our garlic going. Because we want to add this in there. And then I've got about half a pound of mushrooms that we'll slice up. Want a good amount of garlic. Let that flavor really pop in on there. I know, I told Lena, I was like, you better eat that pie up now, because when we leave for our trip this weekend, there will be no pie when you come back on Sunday. It will be gone if you haven't eaten it. I was almost, certain there wasn't going to be any when she woke up, because she was like, I want to have one more slice tomorrow. So she is savoring every little bit. And I feel like she eats it in front of everybody too. Make sure they all know that it is her pie. And I will say it was one of the best key lime pies. I think I got like the perfect ratio.
How do you know what you're making for dinner tonight?
For dinner tonight, since we've already had, as you can imagine, our soccer schedule has already changed. Yet again, it changes all the time. So we're gonna have since I'm gonna be having our like a later dinner time today, I'm gonna be making carnitas, like carnita bowls. So I'm got a lovely pork roast from our butcher box. I'm gonna put that in the Instapot here in a little bit and let that cook up so I can shred it. I'll make a cilantro lime rice and some guacamole, salsa, and just kind of a simple, more Mexican-based dinner for it. And on there, I might even do, there's something there. It's one of my daughter's favorite on there. Maybe do like a bean dish, because she loves beans. And I cleaned out my pantry, and I was like, ooh, I've got some beans in here we can work with, some pinto beans. I might make her some refried beans. Okay, we've got our garlic here. Throw that in here. Give this a nice toss. And I give that a good mix around. And just turn it up just a notch. Okay, let's get our mushrooms sliced up here. Trying to get all of our vegetables out of the way, and that way they can start sauteing. And then we can make our biscuit kind of topping. So I'm going to use about 8 ounces of baby Bella mushrooms. Now you can always use pre-sliced, but I like to slice them myself. When you buy the whole mushrooms, they'll stay longer, and I can slice them a little bit thinner, which means I get a little more mushrooms in every bite. So we'll get those, and then we'll let those saute up in just a second. I love mushrooms in my chicken pot pie. I just love mushrooms. They're so delicious. And you could also use white button mushrooms if you wanted to. Now, I always say fresh works better than canned, but always in a pinch, you could sub them in if you have nothing else. But you're going to add them in later. You want to add them in after you make your stock, because canned mushrooms are kind of in a nice like juice, so a little bit different. Okay, let's get these guys. Okay, I can give my hands a quick rinse because they're garlicky. And I'm going to mix this around. And then we're going to add in, as I lose an onion, let's add in our mushrooms here. And we'll let them saute. And while we do, we're going to mix up our biscuits. We'll mix this around and let them get a good saute. Okay, let's get our biscuits a-going. So this is my sourdough Cheddar Bay biscuit recipe, but I do a double batch. That way I have enough to cover my little Dutch ovens over here. So it's going to use a good amount of our discard. We're going to use a whole cup of our discard. So let me grab a little spatula here. Give it a little stir. And then I'm going to add in 1 whole cup of our sourdough discard. There we go. And it doesn't have to be active, discard or active works for it because we're not using it for the leavening thing. We're just using it to, way to use up discard, but also great the sourdough benefits here. So 1 whole cup. I'm going to just slide this right over here. Okay. And then we're going to add in a whole cup of milk. So it's 2 sticks because again, we are making double our batch here. Butter. What did I say? Milk. We're going to be using milk too, but it is not, you're right. This is butter. Makes it even better. So 1 whole cup of butter. Looking right at it, guys. 1 whole cup of butter. We're going to mix that into our discard. And these are going to be, like a drop biscuit. So we're not doing press and folds. Mix it up until that's kind of incorporated in there. There we go. And then we're going to be adding 1.5 cups of milk. But I'm going to get that here, but we'll get that in just a second. Let me grab my milk right over here. So we'll do 1.5 cups. And there we go. So we're making our wet base, then we're going to add in our flour, and we'll mix it until it's just combined. You don't want to over mix this, and then we'll add in our flour for this. And then we'll add in our baking powder and baking soda because we're going to use both of it for this recipe. So 1.5 cups of milk. Give this a quick toss. Get those kind of moving. Lovely. Okay, now let's add in our spices and our baking powder and baking soda. So we need a whole tablespoon of garlic salt is going to go in this. Going to add a nice flavor to it. And then we're going to need baking powder and baking soda, which I have over here. So I'm going to go grab it from my banana donut area. But we need both of it. We need 2 teaspoons of each. And this is going to help give these biscuits their pop. So 2 teaspoons of baking powder. And 2 teaspoons of baking soda. And then we used a whole tablespoon of garlic salt. So 1, 2. And then we're going to mix those together, and then we'll add in our flour, and then lastly, we will add in our cheese. But make sure you mix this in. Once that baking powder and baking soda kind of mixes with that sourdough discard in there, we'll get a little bit of a fluff up in there. There we go. And then let's add in our flour. We're going to use 4 cups of flour. Again, this is double the recipe. And very important not to over mix. Now, the best part of these is After you're done baking them, you're going to be brushing them with this herby butter, which will give them just a wonderful touch of flavor. Just like the Red Lobster's one, that just garlicky, herby butter on top. So good. So 2, 3, and 4. I'm going to slide this over here for our banana donuts. And we're going to mix these up again. Don't overmix it until it's just barely incorporated where you're not really seeing the powder anymore, but don't overmix it because we will mix it a little bit once we add in our flour or when our cheese. There we go. There we go. Just mix it around nicely, just like this. Perfect. Okay, now we're going to add in about 2 cups of cheese. So I'm going to use freshly grated cheese because it's going to melt better in our biscuits than pre-shredded, just because pre-shredded has like an anti-caking agent on it, which inhibits like the melting process. You can also use white cheddar. Either one works. I like the yellow. For these biscuits, gives them a nice pop of color, but white cheddar is a little bit sharper in flavor, so it gives you a bit of a stronger cheddar flavor into it. So you have to decide whether you want aesthetics or flavor. I find the mild works a little bit better with the pot pies, though. And you could also sub out other cheeses. Gouda works really well with it. It's a nice kind of creamy cheese that's more mild. And sometimes I sub in other spices like Italian herbs and spices with it, and some black pepper. Kind of changes it up a little bit. Okay, we've got about a cup and a half here, so a little bit more. And you can always do a little bit more cheese, but don't go too heavy on it, because if you go a bit too heavy on the cheese, you will mess with the melting, like the baking. It will weigh it down too much and prevent it from kind of popping up. So I want about 2 cups here, which is going to be about half this block. So I kind of know when to stop when I got halfway through it. There we go. And then I'm going to just kind of mix these in until it's just lightly combined. There we go. And again, don't mix it too much because we don't want to compact it down. You want it to bake up nice and light and fluffy on top. You don't want a dense biscuit. You want a nice fluffy one. Okay, there is our beautiful biscuit topping that we're going to put over the top of our base. We can set that to the side now. Give my hands a quick rinse. Check these. Looking lovely. I'm going to add some spices in here now that we've got a good saute on them. They're starting to get nice and tender here. Beautiful. Okay. So our spices that we're going to use on here, we're going to use our stock that has some good seasoning in it, but we're going to use a little bit of extra. I've got a little bit of herbes de Provence, which is kind of like a French seasoning. So you've got an Italian seasoning, there's Greek seasoning. This is your French seasoning. This one has lavender in it, which has some more aromatic notes to it, which is really lovely. I'm going to sprinkle about a teaspoon or so around, maybe a little bit more. It's got just a really nice kind of mellow scent to it. And I make sure I put the lid back on it. One time I took the top off of my garlic salt, and when I sprinkled it over, I forgot to put it on, and then next time I used it, dumped a huge amount in. I think I was making chicken pot pie too when I did that. Okay, we've got those kind of coated in here. I'm not going to add any salt because this is more of a reduction, so it's going to be a bit saltier than a straight up broth. This is our homemade stock. that we made from our chicken carcasses last night, left over from our roast chicken. So we have 2 of them that have been breaking down and simmering overnight. We put onions, celery, carrots in there, bay leaves, black pepper, and then just the juices that were left over from it. And so it's just been rendering down and it's just wonderful. Before we get into adding that in here, I'm going to get our leftover chicken. So we eat, since we're a pretty good sized family, we eat about 1.5 chickens around that. So this is kind of the leftover little bits that I peel off everywhere, which is great for making like, whatever you want, like a soup or chicken pot pie or casseroles or something like that. So I'm going to throw this in here.
Mary, since you
Well, thank you, Mary. We appreciate that. I'm going to pop this in here and we're going to mix it around and kind of coat it up with our veggies, kind of heat it up in here. And then we're going to sprinkle some flour over everything. And then what we're going to do is we're going to ladle out some of our broth, but we'll strain it first into like a measuring cup, and then we'll add it to this. Let's get it. And that way we can make the nice kind of chicken pot pie gravy base for it. But I want to mix this around, kind of heat all of that chicken up first. And then I do have my oven preheated to 400 degrees because that's what we're going to bake them on. My biscuits bake at 400. So if you just wanted to bake biscuits up, that's what they would bake at. We're going to bake them on top of our pot pies though.
do you add heavy cream?
I do not add heavy cream, but you can make a creamy chicken pot pie. I've done it before, but this one I'm going to do just basic because the stock is too good to mask up. If I was just going to use a regular like bouillon, I would sometimes do that to make like a creamier chicken pot pie, like I get chicken a la king pot pie. But this one, because it is such a nice one, I'm not going to do it that way. I'm going to first use a little bit of flour here, kind of coat and sprinkle it over this. This is going to help make the kind of a natural roux base to thicken up the base of it. So I'm going to probably use around 1/4 of a cup or so, but I'm just going to start by sprinkling a really light dusting over the top of my chicken and veggies here. And then I'll mix it in and coat it up. And then if I need a little bit more, I'll add it in. I always like to see what it looks like, but essentially I want everything to be coated in a kind of a nice little paste on it so that when I add my broth in there, it will thicken up and make a nice kind of creamy gravy base for it. There we go. And you don't want you need to have a good amount of flour in there because you don't want to have too soupy of a base. I think I'll add just a sprinkle on this, a little bit more. And it's just depending on how big you make, how many vegetables. I kind of just go by eye. And that's a lot of times of cooking. It's just a visual, go by eye, by eye feeling. The more you get used to it in the kitchen, the more comfortable you're going to get with it. So a little sprinkle more, and then I'll mix it up. And essentially, I'm just making sure that I've got just a nice kind of dry coating on everything. Just a nice, almost like a paste that kind of coats it. And that's what will turn into this gravy base. You want to make sure you have enough of it to kind of soak it up. There we go. It looks pretty good. You can see kind of how it's holding together. And now let's strain. I've got my fine mesh strainer here. And I'm going to ladle some of this base in here so that we can use it for our base for it. I don't want to get any of the vegetables or the bones, so we're just going to use it through here like this. And this is a pretty strong concentrate on there, so it has a lot of flavor. So I'll use a little bit of it, and then if I need to add some water in, I can. And then I'll put it back in because I'll let it continue to stew. But again, just carrots, onions, celery, our two chicken carcasses that have just been stewing overnight on it. Just a continuous boil. I've added water a couple of times because it's about the reducing down and breaking down for it over and over, just to really let it out and make this just wonderful flavors to it. There we go. Okay. And get a little bit more in here. We've got about 2 cups kind of reserved. Pull up some more for it. And just ladle it down. And then you just kind of can shake it here, and you're essentially going to go through until you've ladled it all out for it. So we'll set this right here.
I'll bring this and shake it.
Oh, thank you. But here I've got this wonderful strained stock, which then you can just put in a container to save. I'm going to use it for our chicken pot pie, but it is amazing. It's wonderful. You can freeze it down. This nice fat layer really protects it from, like, you know, in the refrigerator or whatnot. And then when it cools up, it actually congeals. So it's more like a jelly when you're using it, but then it melts into a liquid. Okay, let's pour it in here. We're going to do a little by little. And then we'll add it in. So I'm just going to add in about a cup of it. And then I'll set it down real quick, and we're going to mix it around. And it's going to make a nice, lovely gravy. I'm going to turn my base down here. Give it a nice kind of mix. Beautiful. And then we'll add a little bit more. You don't want to just dump it in all at one time, because you want it to kind of meet with that flour that you've added in to make your kind of chicken pot pie, you know, your gravy base for it. There we go. Let's move these guys
You had a
to the
question
side.
about the stock. When you add more water to it, do you add more seasoning or all the seasoning from the start?
All the seasonings from the start, because as you're cooking it, the water is evaporating out, and so it's the spices and everything stay in there. And essentially, you're continuing to render down those bones and the fat and everything until it's completely, like, kind of cooked, and it makes it into the base of it. So it's kind of like a hybrid between a stock and a bone broth. I don't go cook it till it's completely a bone broth, but it's like a halfway there. And it's just wonderful. It has so much flavor, and it's amazing. I will say it is much better than store-bought.
Rondia and chicken.
Oh, thank you, Rondia. We appreciate that. Here we go. Pour this in here. And you see how just that flour coating up, but we already have this just wonderful kind of gravy base on here for our chicken pot pie. It's just absolutely lovely. Beautiful. And then I'm going to add I'm going to finish it off with our last little bit. Gorgeous.
I need you to switch to those tearless onions.
Perfect. So here we've got that nice kind of coating on here. I'm going to taste it, see if we need to add anything else. Fabulous. I think I'll add just a smidge of pepper. But so good. So good. The flavorings from our roast chicken last night, because I used garlic and fresh rosemary. You can get that hint in here. It's so nice. We're going to add in about a half a teaspoon or so of black pepper, just because I love black pepper.
How many do you cook for most days?
Most days I cook for about 9. So our family is 7, but I also cook all of my parents' meals. And then I have my niece and nephew over here several days a week. So I'm also cooking for them as well, you know, for that. So they're more of like lots of baked goods and like lunches and stuff like that. But it's a full house here. We definitely, you know, lots of mouths to feed. But I love a big family. I'm from a big family, and I love having a big family. So I wouldn't change it. Maybe I'd change the cost of groceries, because those seem to cost an arm and a leg nowadays. But making your stuff homemade does save you a pretty penny. And that's what I always say. It's like, growing up, nobody ever ate out. You ate out like once a month. And now like my kids tell me that all their friends eat out and we're like the strange ones that we eat at home all the time. And I said, but that was the norm growing up. We ate, we rarely ate out as a kid. It was a special treat. And I think it's, society has gone so much to eating out, but it's just like eating out isn't healthy. It's all processed food. It's not real food half the time. And it's not, it's expensive. And so, and I want my kids to realize that that shouldn't be the norm. Cooking at home should be the norm. And,
We go out once a month, and it was the Pizza Hut buffet.
yeah. Growing up, I mean, when I was younger, it was like you went out for people's birthdays, unless you had like maybe you had a pizza night or whatnot. But it was like, somebody's birthday was the special night out. And then, as we got a little bit older, it was maybe once every 2 weeks. It was kind of like maybe we'd go out to a dinner or we'd get like a takeout, but it was a rarity. Now it's like seems to be all the time.
You got a question? Where did you get those pots?
These are actually from Target. They're the like Joanna Gaines's Hearth and Hand. I have them in my Amazon storefront, so you can actually get them on Amazon there. But I love them. They're so cute. They're cast iron. They're actually really reasonably priced. I bake my sourdoughs in them, my little mini ones, and then these are perfect like single serve little chicken pot pie dishes. So they're perfect. Or I actually like they're perfect for like a couple apple crisp, or if you're like my husband and my son, a single serving apple crisp. But they are like just perfect and so cute. Um, it was in my when I bought them, I'm like, oh, this romantic idea will just all be sitting with these cute little things at the table set. I always have these like romantic ideas of how things are going to be. And in the reality, it's always just chaos. But they're cute. And that's all that matters. Okay, we're spooning out our base here into each one. I just try to make them as even as possible for it. And you see how I always make it in here, and it always seems to make 6 perfect, kind of good size mirrors. Now, you could always stretch it and make it a little less and go further, or it fits kind of perfectly in a 9 by 13 inch casserole pan if you wanted to. Okay, let's get our biscuits here. So this is our Cheddar Bay biscuits. We're going to kind of spread these out over the top of each one. I will say I always have a little bit extra biscuit left over, so I could technically do like 1.5 of it, but double always seems to work. Don't pack your biscuits over the top. You want to lay them like loosely over, and then I'll kind of come back and fill in the base for it. So typically when I'm making these biscuits, I bake them for about 15 minutes. These actually will need to bake a little bit longer because they don't have a metal base underneath them to help bring that heat in. So they take a little bit closer to like 20 minutes to bake up, but you want to just make sure that they bake up evenly in the middle for it. And then after this, we will make our banana donuts for that, which is just kind of easy little thing while they're baking up. Here we go. Slide these guys. Oh, got to turn that on. And pop this right over here. Okay. Let's slide this. Let me grab. Put that in the trash real quick. There we go. And we're going to go right here and pop this in here real quick. So I always say, don't make your middle of your biscuit too thick. If you make it too thick, that one doesn't bake up as well because it's the very center that doesn't bake up as easily as the rest of your biscuit. And so it's just, you don't want to have a doughy inside, I always say, for it. Looks like we've got a little Jackie tossing and turning in his nap. he just went down, so I'm hoping he'll fall asleep. He didn't sleep well last night, and hopefully he'll rest back asleep soon. I told you last night he woke up at midnight, and then at 2, and then at 4 I finally grabbed him, and then he came to bed. I had him with me, and he goes, no nap. And I was like, we're still napping. Mama still needs to sleep here. We're still sleeping. So I'm hoping sometimes he'll just wake up and stir a nap, and he'll come back to sleep. So I'm hoping he'll, calm down here. I can see him kind of falling back to sleep. I can kind of hearing him nod off here. Otherwise, I might have to send the cameraman in just a second to give him a good check on. Okay. Let's see. We've got these now. So not super piled high. Kind of spread them out nicely and evenly around the sides here. And there we go. Perfect.
What size are these pots?
I find they're around like 2 cups or 1.5 cups, I think is around the measurement. So they're perfect kind of single serve on there. Let's go pop these guys in the oven to bake up. Again, don't press them down. Don't have them here. This guy's pretty heavy. And we're going to have them go and bake up. After they're done baking, we will brush them with an herby butter. Slide it over here. I'm going to bake them for 15 minutes, then we will rotate them and bake them for 5 minutes on the other side. 15. I thought I would put another 0. 150 would not be good. Okay, while those are baking, let's get our banana donuts making. These are a great, really easy recipe that bake up really quick because they've got a banana donut maker. So they are a family favorite. And since I'm going out of town with my oldest, these are a hit. And I have some bananas that are past their prime and are ready to be used. So let me grab this guy. I'm going to move him a little bit closer. This is a relic from the past. I've had this banana donut maker. Well, this donut maker is not just a banana donut maker, but this banana maker since I was in college. Had it in my dorm room. So I've been using it for like 20 years. And it's like the best thing ever. But they don't make it anymore. But Betty Crocker makes one that's exactly like it. I have it in my Amazon storefront. My friend has the Betty Crocker one. It is just like a cheap old $20 one that I got at Walmart back in the day, but it's still going strong. And it just like kind of like a griddle pan cooks up these donuts really fast and are wonderful. We're going to start. You can use either 3 really good sized bananas or 4 smaller, medium sized ones. And then we're going to mash them up here. Looks like Mr. Jackie fell back asleep. I knew he would. There we go. Well, thank you, Judy. We appreciate that. So just mash your bananas here up until you've got a nice, good little base. And make sure you don't want to leave any too big of a chunk. So make sure they're nice and ripe. The riper, the better. I always say the browner, the blacker the banana, the sweeter and the nicer your banana bread, banana donut, banana muffin will be. So don't use ones that are still good for like peeling and eating because those will not be very good banana bread or banana muffins. We're going to add in a whole cup of brown sugar. The brown sugar is what really makes these so delicious. It just gives it such a wonderful flavor. So 1 whole cup. So there's a 1/2 cup. And then we're going to pack it down, and here's a 1/2 cup more. And then add this over here and give my hands a quick rinse. And then I'm going to mix this in here until they kind of turn into a nice little syrup here. And then we're going to add in 2 teaspoons of baking powder, 5 tablespoons of butter, a teaspoon of salt, and it is like done. It's pretty easy.
Brenda sent you another gift.
Well, thank you, Brenda. We really appreciate that. Again, make sure you don't have any big chunks of bananas.
And how many donuts does this batch make?
This makes between 20 and 25 donuts. It just depends on how full I fill them. Sometimes I overfill them and they burst out, but it's roughly between that many. Also depends if I have little helpers and how much banana batter they steal. This is a recipe that Teddy, this is his favorite one he loves to help me with. If he knows I'm making this, he's at school right now, but if he knows it, he will get his little tower that I have. Like I have a little cooking tower, and he is like right there with me, ready to help, ready to taste, because he's the master taster. And he tells me all the time that he knows how to cook because I taught him how to cook, and he's a really good cook. And all I can think there, and I'm like, "Yep, buddy, you are a really good cook." And I was like, "You're a really good taster." I was on there. He's a good mixer and a really good taster.
Do these need vanilla extract?
No vanilla extract. It is such a simple recipe. I mean, it is bananas, brown sugar, butter, eggs, baking soda, salt, and flour. I mean, it is so simple. That's all it is. And then we do cinnamon sugar. I'm just doing the classic cinnamon sugar. Sometimes I do glazes on them, but my kid's favorite is just the cinnamon sugar. And the cinnamon sugar I feel like holds up the best like over the days. And it's just my classic. So we're going to put in 2 eggs, crack them in. I'm going to poke my yolks. But yeah, no vanilla. Just you can keep it simple for it. And you really just get a nice banana flavor with it. I'm going to just, again, make sure that egg is mixed in here. And then we're going to add in a teaspoon of salt and 2 teaspoons of baking powder. I don't know why I keep saying baking soda. It's because I'm looking at my baking soda because I used it in my biscuits.
And how much butter?
5 tablespoons. I know it's like a random number, but you need more than a fourth of a cup, and you don't need too much. But 5 tablespoons is like a perfect amount for this. So 1 teaspoon of salt, 2 teaspoons of baking powder, 1, 2. So between the baking powder and the eggs, that makes them nice and fluffy. Mix that in here, and then we'll add in our flour, and then we have our delicious base here. There we go. So wonderful. Just mix it around. I always make sure you get that baking powder really mixed in well, so you don't get any clumps. So anytime you feel like you need to just give it a good smush into the side of your bowl, because you can mix that as well as you want because we don't have the flour in here. And now we're going to add in our flour, and we're just going to add in 2 cups of flour. So this is really a really simple recipe. It's not complicated. It's not difficult. And it's pretty easy. So 1, and 2. Now I will say you can definitely make glazes. Sometimes I make, brown sugar glaze, or a peanut butter glaze, or chocolate glaze. Just think of anything that goes well with banana. Works so lovely with it. Mint is not good. It reminds me of that time we went to Sonic, because Sonic has those just great blizzard, or not blizzard, but blasts. And we ordered 2 separate blasts, and it was like, and I have this crazy, but at the time it was a cookie dough, peanut butter, brownie blast. So I really like chocolate and peanut butter. And my husband had ordered a like mint chocolate chip one. And for some reason, they thought we wanted it all together. And so they brought us this one blast of everything. And we were like, what is this? And they're like, well, we thought it was kind of weird that you would want mint with all of this, like a mint chocolate chip, peanut butter chocolate blast. It was so gross.
You're leaving out the worst part. It's not creme de menthe. It was spearmint.
It was spearmint. Yes, it wasn't creme de menthe. It was spearmint. It was not. It was. So yes, I know. you're making a blast, it's got to be, creme de menthe or peppermint. It can't be spearmint. That is not the mint to use.
So take notes, Sonic.
I know. Needs to be a good old Andy. They need to bring partner with Andy's mints. That would be a good one. Okay, we've got our banana donuts here. Good mix around here. You should have a pretty good kind of lumpy, chunky batter because it is a butter batter and it has banana chunks in it. We're going to have our base here. It should be nice and hot. And we're going to spoon in. I'm going to grab a metal spoon because it's a little bit easier to spoon it in with metal than it is with my little rubber spatula here. And you don't need a whole lot to go in each one of these. I always say if you overfill it, it's going to pop out the edges. And then you'll have a mess to clean up later. So I always find it's just my large kitchen spoon, your utensil one, kind of fills it in there.
And you don't need to oil it?
You don't need to oil it. You can oil it if you want to. Oiling it gives you a crunchy crust on your donut. So I used to spray it down, but my kids told me that they like it without. So it's a softer donut without oiling it. And it doesn't stick. So they're non-stick griddle pans on there. There's enough butter in the batter to prevent it. Think about like waffles. You don't need to oil your waffle iron. It's the same kind of concept there. I'm going to get a plate out so that when they're ready, we can rub the butter over them and sprinkle them with our cinnamon sugar, which is just our mixture of sugar and cinnamon, because we always have that around. And then we need to get our butter going for our, to brush over our chicken pot pies. We need it melted and have that because it's going to be a nice kind of herby butter to go over the top. So I'm going to do I have another one? Let me grab some butter out of the fridge because I always need butter. So because I have a good amount of chicken pot pies, it's about double the recipe. I'm going to use, normally I use I don't need a full stick of butter, but I'm going to use about 2/3 of it just because you want to have enough to kind of coat the top of it. So we'll just see where it breaks. That should be good enough. We're going to melt it nice and low and then we're going to add in some onion powder and garlic salt once it's melted to bring in those flavors.
What's your ratio for cinnamon sugar?
So I'm going to tell you, I don't have a true ratio, but I will say I fill it up about this high with sugar and then that much with cinnamon. So it's probably like 4 parts sugar to 1 part cinnamon.
You just showed like a 1 to 7.
I don't know about that. You know what I mean? I figure it's going to taste good no matter what. It's cinnamon sugar. I like it to be more cinnamony than most cinnamon sugar blends. I look for more of the color, and so I want it to be browner than on there. So I can actually kind of show you what mine looks like. So, although I say that and it's not very brown, but normally mine is browner than that. But it could be that it's because it's on the bottom here. Oh, here you go. So if I turn there, you can see those are big chunks of sugar that haven't gone through, but down below on those corners, it's darker there. So every time I open this up, once we've used it all, there's always like these jumbo sugar chunks there, like giant sugar crystals that don't make it through here. Okay, let me grab a fork because these should be around getting close to being done. The nice thing about this donut maker is it doesn't take very long for them to cook up. So a little bit longer on there, but it's about 2 to 3 minutes versus in the oven, which will take, if you have a donut tray, 10 to 12 minutes.
If you wanted to add peanut butter, when would you do that?
So if you were going to make a peanut butter glaze, that would be making it separate where you would make it on there. I wouldn't put peanut butter in the things. You could do peanut butter chips if you wanted to for that little kind of chunk on there. Look at this. Beautiful. I think I might take some of this and start straining some of this stock out here. Actually, you know what? I might render down a little bit more. Look at that. So perfect. Tastes so wonderful. There we go. We've got our butter melting here on it. I'm going to turn it down to about a 2. We don't want it to turn into a brown butter. We just want it to melt up, and then I'll mix it in our onion powder and our garlic salt. Just a little bit of each to add a nice little flavor and the kind of crisping thing. Here we go. I always find sometimes melting butter in my little pan makes it pop a little much. Okay. I'm going to let the residual heat finish it off. Let's check my timing on. Got about a minute left on there, and we can go over there and flip that. Perfect. So you want them nice kind of blonde coloring here. You'll flip them over, and then what I do is poke the little, kind of like their little belly button through. That way they're the perfect little donut here. We're going to make a little donut tower. If I'm doing the glaze, I'll put them on a cookie cooling rack. That way the glaze can drip over, but when I'm doing just the cinnamon sugar, I do it on there. I'm going to put my batter in here, and then we'll do the butter and cinnamon sugar on there. That way these can start cooking. So again, you just need about a spoonful in. And it pops up quite a bit. So it's not a huge amount of batter per donut, but with the 2 eggs and then the 2 teaspoons of baking powder, you get a pretty fluffy donut. So don't overfill, because if you overfill, they'll burst out the sides. And that's why I say you can get a good amount of donuts here. Okay. Before we go flip that, let's do our first round of our butter. Take room temperature butter here. So I always just use kind of thing. And you're just going to rub it over the top of each one. You don't need to do the whole donut because then it gets a bit too much. While they're still hot, you rub it over the top, just like this. And you see that while they're hot, it just melts the butter. So it gives you the perfect amount. And then I'm going to take my beautiful cinnamon sugar shaker. And you pop it right here, right over the top. And it gives you the perfect amount of sweetness without it being like over the top. Okay, well, those are sitting there. And this is, I will say, my family's favorite way. It's just a classic way. So I think it's their favorite way because that's the original way I always did them. And then I started doing, more jazzy ways. Let's get this. We're going to turn these and just rotate them and let them cook for, these might not even need that much longer. I think I did a perfect kind of pop on it. Beautiful. I always like to give them a nice little tap. I think these only need about 2 more minutes and then they're perfect, which is perfect timing. 2 minutes and then they should be just lovely. So let's finish up our garlic and our little herby paste for it. So you're going to use, we've got our melted butter here. And then we're going to use a little bit of onion powder and garlic salt. The onion powder adds a bit more of a savory note to it. So I'm going to use about a teaspoon of it.
Are you prepping for the weekend?
I did a little bit of prep earlier in this week, and then I think tomorrow I'm going to make up some more. I made some, I am so glad I looked. This happened to me before. Look at that. I took it off. Put this back on here. Very careful. But I made some chicken taquitos and some chicken tenders for them to have. On here, we need about a teaspoon and a half. And there, and then we'll have some donuts here. These will get eaten up before then.
And can you go over the recipe for the donuts?
For the donuts, yes. This is such a delicious and simple recipe. 2 cups of flour, 1 cup of brown sugar, a teaspoon of salt, 2 teaspoons of baking powder, 5 tablespoons of melted butter, 2 eggs, and then 3 to 4 mashed bananas. And mix them all together. And then we put them in our donut maker. If you don't have a donut maker, but you have a donut tray at home, you can put them on there and bake them at 350 for 10 to 12 minutes. So we're just about done, a little bit longer. We wait until they've got a nice kind of golden brown color, and then we'll put them on there. You don't want to overcook them because then they will get more dry for it. But simple, lovely, delicious on there. Okay. I think we can start heading to grab our, yep, we've got about 2 seconds left. Perfect timing. And then we'll coat these with our lovely bit of butter because that's the best part. Look at these gorgeous biscuit pot pies. These are like comfort food 101 and so simple to make. You know, I will say like chicken pot pies are another level because you got to make the pie crust, but these are really easy to whip together and make on there. And they're just so wonderful in flavor. So we've got our homemade sourdough biscuits on top with that, you know, the Cheddar Bay biscuits on there. And we're going to go over here with our lovely herby butter here that we have onion powder and garlic salt in it to kind of give it a nice, just lovely kind of wonderful crust on top of it. So we'll brush it over the top. But underneath it, we have our chicken pot pie filling with mushrooms, carrots, celery, onions. We used a little bit of herb de Provence seasoning. And then, of course, our homemade stock left over from our chicken that we made last night that we've been rendering overnight for. So pretty delicious. And I know that Torin and my parents, these are their favorite meals. So they're going to be very, very happy. Here we go. And smell wonderful. Beautiful. Okay, let's check these guys out real quick. Get our round out. Beautiful. I use a little bit of a fork to just pop them out. But you see how they just lift out effortlessly. And put our first round. I'll scoop in my next one, and then we'll coat them with butter and sprinkle our cinnamon sugar over them. That way we'll do it. But I always like to get my next round going before I have or start to do that. So we've already got 10 made, and we're about going halfway through the batter. Get that. Give my hands a quick rinse. And now we're going to rub our room temperature butter over it. Now you could also melt butter and brush it over, but this I find is just a simple way to do it. And it's not a lot of butter. I'll probably use less than a tablespoon of butter for all 25 donuts because it's just enough to get that nice little bit of cinnamon sugar to stick to the top, and you've just got this nice little sweet coating, a little bit of a crunch to it. And then we'll sprinkle our cinnamon sugar mixture right over the top of our banana donuts. And it's a really fun way to use bananas that are different than the classic banana bread. Well, guys, let's serve up our lunch today. Let me grab a plate.
Do you ever use powdered sugar as a topping?
You know, a lot of times if I use powdered sugar, I use it in a glaze, but you could definitely do, I was actually talking about, I could do a cinnamon powdered sugar donut or a powdered sugar donut. I haven't done them, but I always keep saying, I'm like, I should do it because we do love powdered sugar donuts. I just never think to do it outside of glaze. But I definitely need to do it because sometimes when I do my fried donuts, I'll do powdered sugar ones, which are a little bit different because those kind of holds up the grease a little better. But we are ready here. Let me see, which one do I want to grab? I'm gonna make sure I put these on because I'll grab one and it'll be hot. Okay, today for lunch, we have our homemade homemade chicken pot pie biscuit lunch. We made a lovely sourdough Cheddar Bay biscuit topping with our nice butter, herb butter topping in there. Underneath it, we have a lovely chicken pot pie base with chicken, mushrooms, celery, carrots, herbs de Provence, and then a lovely kind of gravy made with our homemade chicken stock that we've been rendering overnight. And then for a little sweet treat on the side, we have our homemade banana donuts with a little bit of cinnamon sugar, which is just the perfect little sweetness to them, but you get all that kind of banana bread flavor in them as well. Well, guys, thank you so much for joining us here. Don't forget to like and subscribe. I try to do live cooking shows every single day, kind of show you what we're making for our family and hopefully teach you guys something along the way. Again, we do upload all of our videos to the link on our page. So if you ever want to recreate any of these recipes at home, you can just go to our page and search for what we made, our homemade chicken pot pie biscuit, and then our banana donuts. And you can always watch and cook along with me again. We also have a link to our Amazon storefront, and it has all of our cooking gear and gadgets in it. We also have our little mini Dutch ovens in there as well. And you can find all that stuff. Well, guys, thank you guys